Okay, good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us. This class is, of course, in the merit of all the Jewish people, wherever they may be, especially those in the land of Israel, especially those who need healing, rescuing, success, conjugate, and everything that they need. Okay, so tonight's topic is going to be trust in God, or as it says in the US dollar bill, in God we trust, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. So, first thing we'll discuss is Reishis Chachma, Shara Hava. This is a book was written, I believe, like 400 or 500 years ago. I have to look it up. And he says this is essential Jewish ethics, thoughts, etc. He says as follows: trust in God is inner peace and calm in the face of worries, knowing that there's something to lean on, a shield, a strong wall. This is because everything comes from God. This is why King David said, I trust in you, God. I trust in your kindness. In this I trust. In him, in my heart, trust, and I will be saved. Trust in him, and he will do. So we know that God's kindness and generosity extend to those who trust him, whether deserving or not. His kindness and generosity will never cease nor subside. So here, the Reishis Chachma is explaining that the reason why we trust in God is because God is in charge of everything. If you know that God's in charge of everything, then automatically there's nothing that is, since there's everything, he's in charge of everything, there's nothing that's beyond his reach. So if you trust in God, he'll take care of you. And here is from Shari Teshuvah of Rabbi Yonah, medieval sage. And he says as follows. It says in the verse, when you go out to war and you will see a horse in a chariot, a great nation, do not fear him. We are exhorted that when we see a danger approaching, God's salvation should be in our minds, and we should put our trust in him. As the verse says, for his salvation is near to those who fear him, and who are you that you fear mortal man? So we see here that God is saying that even when we see things that are objectively threatening, like chariots and swordsmen coming to you, you shall trust in God. Now, even like we said, even when you see that something is potentially difficult, we should have faith that it will be transformed into open and revealed good. Okay, so not just that we trust that God knows what he's doing, but we trust that God will make things good for us. And to illustrate this point, I'll share a story about the Baal Shem Tov. There was a story of the Baal Shem Tov once traveled to an inn in a small village to visit with his students, and this Jew who ran the inn, as was customary in those days, he would lease the inn from the local landlord, the local non-Jewish nobleman, and he was so excited to see these prestigious rabbis and students and guests that he invites them in. He gives them everything that they need, and the sheriff of the town, who also happens to be employed by the landlord, by the landowner, and he comes in, he knocks 3 times on the table, and a few hours later again, this sheriff comes in, knocks 3 times on the table, and the Baal Shem Tov asked the homeowner, the innkeeper, I should say, what is this about? He said, oh, don't worry about it. That's just the sheriff. His job is that he knocks on the table the day that the rent comes, and if he comes 3 times and he knocks and there's no rent, then he throws you into prison, and your family is in big trouble, as they had debtor's prison back in those days. So the Baal Shem Tov said, wow, you're so calm and collected. Your mood hasn't changed at all. Twice this guy came and knocked. You must have all the money available. He said, no, I actually don't have a penny. And they said, he said, no. And the Baal Shem Tov said, well, what are you going to do? He said, don't worry. God will take care of me. I know, I trust in him. So he went and he served them breakfast. He took care of them. He was calm, sitting at the table. And eventually, after they finish their meal, comes in the sheriff, knocks on the door, knocks on the table, and that's the sign, you got to pay the rent. So he comes. He asked the Baal Shem Tov asked, do you have the money? He says, no, I don't have anything. I don't have any money, but God will take care of me. So he goes and he leaves the house, and the Baal Shem Tov sees that the innkeeper is going on the road, and he passes by a horse and carriage. And it seems that they're talking. the innkeeper eventually goes on his way, and the carriage actually turns around, goes back, talks to the innkeeper, and he gives him something, and the innkeeper goes on his way to pay the rent. So the Baal Shem Tov went to the driver of this carriage. He said, "What happened? What was your conversation with this innkeeper?" He said, "Listen, I offered the innkeeper I want to buy all his whiskey for the coming year that he makes this coming season. So we couldn't agree on the price, and he refused to settle for anything less than the amount that he had decided. And he actually walked away. Maybe this is also a lesson in the art of making a sale. He walks away. The guy comes back and gives him everything that he wanted, and that money, that amount that he asked for, was the exact amount of the rent that was due. And he went and he paid the landlord. And the Baal Shem Tov showed his students, this is what true trust in God is. This person trusted that God will take care of him. He knew that God's salvation was coming, and he was able to, and he wouldn't even take half or 3/4 or whatever it was of the negotiations with this businessman. He said, no, God is going to provide for me. He's going to give me everything that I need. Now, more than that, we also have a commandment to pray. And in prayer, we ask for these things. We ask for God's intervention to make things good. Now, to demonstrate this, we could recall the Talmud in Tractate Brachos, page 10a, discusses a story that happened with King Hezekiah. In the book of Isaiah, Isaiah has a conversation with Hezekiah, and Hezekiah says, in the Hebrew, by the way, it's Hezekiah and Yeshayahu. So Hezekiyahu and Yeshayahu. We'll use the English for now. So Isaiah says to the king Hezekiah that you are going to die, because he was deathly ill, and he says you're going to die. This is in Isaiah chapter 38. And Hezekiah says, why? What did I do wrong? Why am I going to die? He says, because you never got married, and you didn't have children. Now, Hezekiah basically told Isaiah that actually the reason he didn't have children was because he also was a prophet, and he saw that his children were going to die. I'm sorry, his children were not going to be righteous. I apologize. And since his children were not going to be righteous, which ended up being true, the king Menashe was a severe idolater and brought idolatry to the land of Israel. He didn't want to have children. And Isaiah said, that's none of your business. God gives a mitzvah to have children, and you should have gotten married. So that's why you're going to die. So Hezekiah says to Isaiah, I have an idea. Let me marry your daughter, and maybe my merit, and your merit together, we could avert the decree, and that he will survive this illness, and maybe perhaps even they will have virtuous children, righteous children. So Isaiah says, no, this decree has already been sealed. And Hezekiah says, it's time for you to leave. Because now he was no longer giving prophecy, which you have to listen to the prophecy of the prophet. However, he was not required to listen to Isaiah's opinions. And he was interested in Isaiah's opinions. So, and he concluded as follows. He says, I have a tradition from, this is again in the Talmud, that I have a tradition from the house of my ancestors, from King David, that even if a sharp sword rests upon a person's neck, he should not prevent himself from praying for mercy. One may still hold out hope that his prayers will be answered, as was David himself when he saw the angel of destruction, but prayed for mercy, and his prayers were answered. So this is of course what ends up happening. Hezekiah prays, and he survives this thing, and he ends up having children, and that whole story. So we see that this idea that not only is this something that we have to trust in God, but we trust through asking, right? We ask God, and God will surely give us what we want. Now, what if bad things do happen? So the Talmud on page 54a says as follows: a person is obligated to thank God and bless God for the bad things that happen, just as we bless God for the good things that happen. And the Talmud quotes the verse in Deuteronomy, you shall love God with all your heart, with all your soul, and all your might. and with all your heart, which is written. In the plural sense, the Talmud explains that is referring to both your good things and bad things. So even though you might be, even though you might not see the revealed good, we still have to accept it and thank God for it. Now, why is that? If we're trusting in God, then we not only we're trusting that even the bad things that happen, we trust that those things are also for the best. Now, there's two stories in the Talmud that discuss this idea, and we're going to discuss these two stories, and we will see the difference between trusting in God and seeing that everything is for the best, and even further trusting that even things that are bad are really good. So let's look. The first story is in the Talmud, also in Brachos, page 60b. And the story goes like this. The Talmud says a story of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva went to a certain city, and he said, he went to a city and he asked people there if he had a place to stay, and nobody would let him into the house. Apparently, it was not available. It was all booked up. It's kind of like in June when we try to get a hotel room in Duluth, right? Around the weekend, the Grandma's Marathon. Similar, maybe that's where he went. Maybe he came here. I don't know. The Talmud does not name the city, and he said everything that God does is for the best. So he went and slept in a field, and he had with him a rooster, a donkey, and a candle. The rooster was supposed to wake him up in the morning. His donkey is obviously his mode of travel, and his candle is so he could study Torah. So the wind came and blew out the candle, and a cat came and ate his rooster, and a lion came and ate the donkey. So now he has nothing. He has no way to wake up in the morning. He has no way to study Torah. He has no means of travel. What did he say? His reaction was, everything that God does is for the best. That's what Rabbi Akiva said. And that night, a gang of robbers came and ravaged the town, and the only one that they didn't attack was Rabbi Akiva, because they couldn't hear, if they didn't hear his donkey, they couldn't see his light, and they couldn't hear his chicken. So therefore, he said, you see, that everything that God does is for the best. So even though all these things happened, he was ultimately saved. Now we have a second story in the Talmud, and the tractate Tanis, page 21a. This is a story about Rabbi Nachum Ish Gamzu. Now, why was he called Nachum Ish Gamzu? Because he would always say Gamzu Latova. This too is for the best. And how did that story happen? So one time, there was a decree that was going to be that was being debated by the Roman government who controlled Israel at the time. This is in the post of the end after the destruction of the temple. Maybe it was before. I don't recall exactly. I believe it was after. And they were going to basically go to the king. They were going to bring a gift to the king in Rome, and they hoped that would help the appease the king, and he wouldn't sign whatever decree he was going to sign. So they said, who should go? They wanted somebody who had a lot of merit. So they said, Nachum Ish Gamzu always has miracles happen to him. So they sent him with a chest of jewels, and he went to, on his travels on the way to Rome, he spent the night in a certain inn. And when he got to the inn, the innkeeper was not an honest person, and he searched through Rabbi Nachum Ish Gamzu's stuff middle of the night, and sure enough, they discovered he has with him a treasure chest full of gold and silver and coins and all kinds of wonderful things. And they stole it and replaced it with dirt, also a very heavy object, and they figured he wasn't going to open it until he gets to his destination. By then, he'll be long gone, and he'll never figure out what happened. So the next day, he's going on his way, and Rabbi Nachum Ish Gamzu goes to his next stop, and he opens up, checking on the jewels, and he sees they're all gone. And he says, Gamzu l'taiva. This too is for the good. He gets to the ruler, and he opens up the chest, and the king sees that it's full of dirt. And the king said, this is not This isn't what I was expecting. You're mocking me. So they said he should be put to death. And Rabbi Nachum Ish Gamzu said, Gamzu Taiva, this too is for the good. Now Elijah the prophet came and appeared as one of the ministers, and he said, listen, there's a tradition that Abraham, when he had the battle of the 4 kings against the 5 kings, that he took dirt and he threw it at his enemies, and it turns to swords and arrows, and it defeated them. So maybe these are the children of Abraham. Perhaps they have an inheritance of this dirt. And the king said that, well, actually, there's a province that I'm trying to colonize, whatever you want to call it, and he's having a rebellion, and he's having a tough time with them. So he said, send some of this dirt to the front, throw it at them, see what happens. And sure enough, they throw it, and it turns into swords and arrows, and they have a tremendous victory. And now they take the same chest that he came full of dirt, they fill it up with gold and jewels and wonderful things, expensive diamonds, whatever it was. And now he's on his way back. And on the way back, he unsuspectingly stays in the same inn. And they said, wow, now he's escorted by guards and royal guards of the emperor. And the innkeeper's like, hey, what's with this? Last time you were here, you weren't. He explained them the story, that he was on his way, he was robbed, and this ends up happening, that he comes with dirt. And now the innkeeper thought that maybe the dirt that's in his house is the best dirt. And this is secret dirt, and it's special dirt. So he breaks down his house, and he fills up carts and carts and carts of dirt from his property, every single bit of dirt he could get, and he brings it to the emperor. He says, this is the dirt that Rabbi Nachum Ish Gamzu brought. And of course, it didn't really work out, and he was killed. So what do we see the difference between these two stories? Rabbi Akiva said everything that God does is ultimately for the good, versus Rabbi Nachum Ish Gamzu viewed it as actually this itself was for the good. And we see also the difference in the reaction of the story. In the end of the day, what happened to Rabbi Akiva was a terrible thing. The city was attacked, and he was miraculously saved. Versus the story of Rabbi Nachum Ish Gamzu is the opposite. That actually, if Rabbi Nachum Ish Gamzu would have come to Rome with a bunch of gold and silver, as we saw at the end of the story, the king has plenty of gold and silver. He has plenty of jewels. He doesn't need the gold and silver. What does he need? He needed this dirt. So actually, the best thing that could have happened to Rabbi Nachum Ish Gamzu was that he get this dirt and ends up being this miraculous dirt that, and now he is, the Jewish people are saved, and he's now being honored. So this is the difference between the trust of Rabbi Akiva versus the trust in God that Rabbi Nachum Ish Gamzu had. Rabbi Nachum Ish Gamzu trusted that whatever God was doing, not that it would ultimately turn out to be good, but that itself was the best thing that could ever happen. And that is the kind of faith in God that we must have. We have to understand that that number one is that trust in God. We have to be even in a situation that, even like Hezekiah said, that even in a situation where it seems like the worst scenario could possibly be, we have to trust in God, and we have to trust that it'll be ultimately good, and that even if something negative happens, we have to trust God that this is the best thing. Not that it will ultimately turn out the best, but this is the best thing that could happen, and that this is truly hidden good. I actually did study something this past Shabbos as well, a discourse of the Rabbi that he discusses this idea that actually every time we pray, that when we say a blessing in the prayer, we always use God's name. So seemingly, if I say a blessing and I say, blessed are you, God, who heals the sick, seemingly, if the person who I'm praying for is not healed, then maybe I made a blessing in vain, which is against the Torah. So the Rabbi actually explains on that over there in a different discourse that actually it must be that in some way that this person was healed as well. That it has to come down into reality. That maybe we're not seeing it. Maybe we're not. Maybe we don't. Maybe it's not the full healing, but in some way this person is doing better. It has to be, because otherwise we will be making a desecration, of God's name. So we see here that not only is our prayers always, like the famous joke goes that, God always answers me. The answer was no, but in truth is the answer is always yes. The answer is always yes. God is always answering. We might not understand the answer. We might not be revealed, but in some way God is always answering our prayers as long as we have trust in Him. Thank you very much. Next week is Purim, we hope to see you if you're in the area Thursday night for Megillah reading and a small Purim party, and as well as Friday afternoon, we're going to have a Megillah reading followed by Kabbalah Shabbos, by Friday evening services. Everybody's welcome. You could send a message to find out the details. So therefore, there will not be a class Thursday night. That will be replaced by reading of Megillah and Purim, and wishing everybody a wonderful Purim and a good Shabbos, and we will see you in a few weeks.